Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. So glad you're here. So glad you're here. Thanks for coming. My goodness, look at this. I love it as people appear from all over joining us. Wonderful. My gosh, I think our waiting room is still emptying. So we'll give it just a minute. Oh my gosh. Wonderful. So glad you're all here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We had 55 people signed up for today's session. Megan Wagner is popular and has great information to share. All right, I think our waiting room is empty and I'm sure we'll have people joining us, but let's go ahead and get started so we can get every minute out of our time together. My name is Carrie Kopnick and I serve the Chaplaincy Institute as our community minister. Many of us know, but I'm just going to go over it. The Chaplaincy Institute provides education for those seeking to serve in hospitals, hospice, disasters, prisons, corporation, military, and educational, activist, environmental contexts, as well as spiritual companions. We're so glad that you've joined us for the ChI Talks. This is a monthly event exploring facets of spirituality through an interfaith lens with the ChI community, and it happens every third Tuesday at 4 p.m. We're recording our session today, so if you wish not to be on camera, please turn off your video and your image will not appear on the recording. And we'll have time at the end of today's session for questions for Megan or for me and Shay about the Chaplaincy Institute. So welcome Shay Green, doer of all things at the Chaplaincy Institute and my treasured coworker. A little bit more about today's speaker. Megan Wagner is the Director of Spiritual Psychology at ChI and is a therapist, Kabbalah teacher, astrologer, interfaith minister, and ritual leader. For 30 years, Megan has been facilitating rituals for individuals and groups using the sacred arts of drumming, chanting, storytelling, psychodrama, and much more. She trained with shaman Melodoma Somé and Sobonfu Somé and ritual experts Erica Helm and Michael Mead, Martin Prechtel, and Marian Woodman. Thanks so much for being with us here today, Megan.
Thank you, Carrie. Hi, everybody. It's really great to see you. Some of you I know, some of you I haven't met before, so it's wonderful to see all of you. I'd like to start our talk on ritual by doing a very simple, small ritual. I'm just going to be lighting a candle, and I know it sounds simple, and sometimes this can be a really effective, simple way to start a group. So as we light this light, let's tune into each other as we create our virtual sacred circle. Just coming into the resonance of this particular afternoon, into the resonance of this particular circle. We honor each and every one that has shown up today. And may this be a learning and joyous occasion to be together. May it be so. So as Carrie was introducing me, one of the things that I learned after I trained as a therapist was that as I was working with people, one-on-one, sometimes in couples, sometimes families, it really occurred to me that there's a lot of material that gets stuck inside the psyche through either personal trauma, collective trauma, societal trauma. And I really realized that I needed more tools than talking therapy. And so when I was living in London, I began training with some West African shaman named Melodoma and Sobonfu Somé, a Guatemalan shaman named Martin Prechtel, and some master storytellers, Erica Helm Mead and Michael Mead. And when I first started to do ritual work in larger groups, it was such a profound experience for me, because what I really started to understand was that even though I totally value therapy and spiritual direction and the way we talk through trauma and process life cycle changes and things, What I really got from doing ritual work together was that it could shift stuck material or trauma material much more quickly than I could as a therapist doing talking therapy. And of course, I totally value spiritual direction and therapy because for one-on-one work, it's wonderful. And, you know, for thousands of years, our ancestors have been meeting in groups and communities to do communal ritual. And so when I started learning more about ritual, I really could understand how it was shifting things inside of me, things that had been stuck for years. And being part of a community that was moving through a ritual space was just an amazing experience for me. And so I got so excited about it. And I really got kind of pulled in by Simone Fusome. She was, bless her soul, she's passed now. She was such a great mentor for me because she really threw me into the deep end. And, you know, I was a baby drummer, you know, I hadn't really drummed that much. And she was like, come on, Megan. And she threw me into the deep end. And I started drumming for large rituals with her and then started really understanding how to prepare ritual space, and then started holding sacred space for others. And so through a lot of different experiences, which I'll share some today, I really learned the value of what it means to hold ritual space. And I'm going to be sharing a few tips for you, and then you know, showing you or telling you about the training that's coming up that I'll be doing with my partner, Jim, in August of this year, really training people to be certified to be healing ritual facilitators. Many of you have been to rituals all your life, whether it was at a spiritual service or maybe a life cycle celebration. And there are just some really simple tips to make celebrations and rituals really quite amazing. So also feel free to type some questions into the chat as I'm going, and I'll stop from time to time and just say, does anybody have any questions? So feel free to interact and to ask questions. Okay. So why are healing rituals so powerful? You know, rituals, when they're created with facility and skill and love, can really shift energy that's been stuck through individual and collective trauma, family patterns, and certain life circumstances. And, you know, personal and communal rituals can shift and change and clear the energy around a person or a family, a couple, a community in a really short period of time. And as I was saying before, for thousands of years, people have gathered in community to create rituals of celebration, grief, loss, life cycles, reconciliation, birth, death, marriage, connection to the earth, connection to the cosmos, and so much more. And rituals, when they're facilitated with skill, they really keep the energy flowing, and it can be miraculous in terms of healing wounds or past trauma. And rituals help us to flow around the seasons of life and enjoy the rejuvenation that comes through the death and rebirth process. And I thought it was significant that we're meeting today because today is the first day of spring and we're still in the spring equinox energy. And this is a perfect time to do this talk on ritual, because it's really amazing when you can gather a group together and do life cycle seasonal rituals. And depending on what community that you belong to, it's a wonderful way to gather and to celebrate the movement of the seasons. So happy spring equinox, everybody. This is a wonderful time to be talking about all this. So there's a few different reasons why we create ritual. So the purpose of healing rituals is, number one, is to create an altered consciousness space, so that rituals are really to create a sacred space that's different from our everyday reality, so that people can come into the sacred space and literally change their brain waves. And when that happens, when people feel safe and there's some singing or there's some drumming or there's some movement, and they're taken through a ritual, it can literally create the power of changing your brainwaves so that you can get yourself into a different state of mind. And that's usually when things really shift and change. It also helps you to focus your personal intent and your will. And we don't realize what powerful manifestors we are until we really focus our will and focus our intentions. And I find that when I'm in a group of people and everybody's focusing on a sacred intention, it gives a lot of energy and power to whatever your intentions are. And also, a ritual can help you integrate certain parts of your personality that may feel disconnected. Like you might have a ritual that calls in your spirit guides or opens your third eye so that your intuition can turn on. And often people may be cut off from that. And so if you do a ritual, it can help to kind of bring back these parts of the personality that have been buried. Also, rituals can help to open the heart and make us receptive to healing, because oftentimes we don't heal because our heart has been closed because of hurt and pain. And oftentimes ritual can be the sacred space that opens up our heart so that we're receptive to the healing of the ritual, the people, and also the spirit that we have called in. Also, it gives us access to new perspectives. Because often in our everyday world, we're kind of stuck in our own thinking, and sometimes we're stuck in our own bubble. And so when we come into a ritual space and other things are happening and people are there, it often opens up a space where we can gain new perspectives on our life. Also, one of the things that I think is important is that ritual can help us to activate the law of attraction. And I don't mean that in a kind of new agey sort of way. I mean it in the resonance kind of way. So that when you set your intention to manifest something in your life, and it could be a happy family, a better relationship, world peace, something positive for the earth. When you come into ritual space and you start to use the energy of sound and the ritual space, however it's been set up, it can activate a law of attraction where you get very focused on what it is that you desire. And what I have found is that after powerful rituals, things start to happen really quickly, like the things that I set my intention for. And so I always just open myself for spirit to manifest and to attract the things that I set my intention to do. And also the purpose of healing rituals is literally to feel healed, to have experienced reconciliation, to repair the past, and to do things like conscious coupling, conscious uncoupling. So it really just raises our awareness and intention of what we're actually doing in our lives. So lots of different reasons why we do healing rituals. And what I have found also is that it's really important to train to be a ritual holder, a ritual leader. Many of you here have probably led rituals, and I'm sure you're good at it. I have led tons of rituals myself, but I've also been at rituals where things went radically wrong. And those were actually really helpful experiences for me because I was watching the ritual leader very closely because I was learning myself. And it was really helpful to watch an effective ritual leader, what they do, how they hold the space, how they move energy from one thing to another, and also what they do when something goes wrong in a ritual, because we can't control everything that goes on in a ritual. And so I've really watched a lot. And so I've gleaned a lot of what makes a good ritual leader and what makes a not so good ritual leader. So I'm just going to read to you a couple things that have come to my mind about what I respect in ritual leaders and what makes a good one. The first one is that a good ritual leader creates safe boundaries and a sacred space so that people feel safe. I think this is one of the most important things. I know that when I come into a ritual space and I may not know everybody, I might feel uncomfortable, like I'm going to be asked to do something that I may not want to do, like move or dance, and so a good ritual leader is going to make people feel comfortable and create healthy boundaries. The second thing, to use creativity and variety in the ritual. Have you ever been to a ritual that was so boring? You know, the energy just kind of goes flat. So it's really important to not only engage participants, but to have a nice variety. Okay, so you have some sound, some music, maybe some meditation time, and then everyone stands up and does something. And so a good ritual leader will facilitate variety. Engages participants, really, really important. Also, a good ritual leader will have some structure. So oftentimes a good ritual leader will outline, this is what's going to happen. We're going to do this. We're going to walk from this station over to the water station, or we're going to go into this place where you can receive some hands-on healing, and then a good ritual leader might say, and if you feel uncomfortable with anything, please feel free to take care of yourself. And to not leave the ritual space. This is also something really, really important, because you want to hold the integrity of a ritual space. So say you're in one room, you want to make sure that everybody stays in that room. So really important. Also structure, and also being open to the flow of spirit. I really learned this from Malidoma and Sabanfu, the West African shaman, because what they really taught me was to like put the structure in place, and then you call in spirit. And sometimes spirit has other things in mind that you weren't aware of. And so a good ritual leader is going to be flexible and listening for where the spirit is moving, and also holding the structure. Okay, so you have to be flexible as a ritual leader. I remember one time I was doing a big ritual and I was drumming for it, and I had set the whole thing up. The flow was going well, and everyone was supposed to go outside and then back inside the room. And 15 minutes went by and no one was coming back into the room. And I was like, where is everybody? And apparently they had gotten stuck at one of the stations, like it was a fire station outside where people were supposed to burn something. And it got stuck. And so the flow stopped. So I actually had to stop drumming, which I never have done before. I came out, and as a good ritual leader, I was like, okay, everybody, let's get the flow going, and had to get everyone back into the room. And it was not my intention to stop the drumming. It's just that I had to do it. I had to be flexible. And then I got everybody back in, and the ritual carried on, and it was fine. It's just that a good ritual leader has to be flexible. Also, to set clear intentions and to help participants set clear intentions. Okay. I know for me, if I'm in a ritual and I don't know what's going on, it makes me feel uncomfortable. Okay. Now, people feel uncomfortable at ritual, and that's okay. I mean, I think there needs to be a little bit of an envelope push, a little bit of an edge, so that people stretch themselves. It's just that you want to give people enough instruction so that they know what they're doing. So I always make sure I ask questions. Also, this might seem really simple, but a good ritual leader is mature. And I say that because you have to hold the sacred space. And I have done a lot of ritual with leaders who giggle, or they laugh because they're uncomfortable, or they talk in a way that just doesn't feel like a ritual voice. And it's because they're anxious. And I understand that. It's just that it really the energy in the ritual can really, drain out if a ritual leader doesn't hold the sacred space well. Also, a good ritual leader is able to play and hold character space. So for example, you might have a ritual where you want to help people connect with the Divine Mother. I've done lots of rituals like this. And I may be in the ritual, I may be holding the space of the Divine Mother. So I might have a cape on with a hood, and so you can't see my face. I have to hold that Divine Mother space when people come to me, and then I'm the Divine Mother for them. And so if I can embody and hold that space, it's very much like psychodrama. When I'm able to hold that space, it really facilitates an amazing experience for people. So that's another thing. You don't have to do that if you're a ritual leader. It's just that it's a really nice thing to add if you want to put some variety in a ritual. Okay, here are the 7 biggest mistakes that ritual leaders make. And then I'll open it up for questions. Okay, number one of the biggest mistakes that ritual leaders make is that they don't hold safe boundaries. And I will tell you an example. I was in London and it was summer solstice. And I was doing a ritual with this, it was a Wiccan group, and someone had invited me to it. And we were doing ritual outside, and they were lighting bonfires. I mean, this was a really, potent thing to do. And we were in a big park, and they lit a bonfire. Everything was safe. But they didn't close down the sacred space. And so that boundary was left open. And so they didn't really put out the fire very well. And a couple minutes after the ritual ended, I am not kidding you, a fire popped up about 20 feet away because one of the embers of the fire had gone through a root of a tree and popped up. It was really weird. But when I reflected back on it, I realized they had not held a sacred container around the shutting down of the space. And that was a really important lesson for me. So a bad ritual leader doesn't hold the safe boundaries. Okay. A lack of variety and creativity. Okay. You just don't want your participants to get bored. Okay. So people have to move. They have to be going from one station to another. They have to be actively participating, whether it's singing a song together or going up to a shrine together. Okay. There has to be variety and engagement. Mistake number 4, when there is a chaotic structure and people don't know what to do, like they go to one station and they don't know where to go after that. Okay, so if there's chaos, it doesn't work. When it's very unfocused, like when people don't really get what the ritual is about, okay, it creates discomfort and chaos. Also, mistake number 6 is when you have a leader that's kind of immature, like I was talking about, who laughs or just doesn't hold the space. And number 7 is when the ritual leader doesn't hold the ritual acting mode. Okay, so if I'm holding, let's say I'm an angel or a spirit guide. If I'm not holding that character, well, then the ritual kind of falls apart. I've got a lot more to say, but let me just stop it there for a moment and just open it out if anyone has any questions about ritual, because I'm going to actually talk about some of the elements of ritual and then how to set up a ritual. But any questions right now? Be happy to answer.
I can't see everybody all at once, so either raise your hand or wave it around. David, I see you.
Thank you for your presentation. I had a question around when you talk about kind of keeping a safe container and kind of not allowing people to leave the kind of ritual space. Could you say more about that? It initially lands on me as kind of like, that sounds a little scary actually for a participant. You can't leave. I'm sure you don't mean it that way, but maybe a little more nuance to help me around that would be helpful.
Yeah, like a weird cult kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean it that
you can
way.
come, you can enter, but you can never leave. I think that's in a song I've heard once.
Yeah, it's mostly around, like, let's say we're going to do a ritual for 2 hours. Okay. Now, I always say to people, please use the bathroom before we start, because what happens is once you set up like a sacred circle and everything is focused on the intention of the circle, let's say we're having a grief ritual. Okay. And we've set up like a beautiful shrine and we're going to do some grieving. What you don't want is for people to go to the bathroom, open the door, make noise, go out, do their own thing, because the intention of the ritual is to focus on helping people release their grief, for example. So that's really what I mean. I mean, of course, if somebody has to use the bathroom, of course, that's okay. But what I like to say to people is, this is a special occasion where we're actually holding space for everybody else as well. So that's what I mean. And just make it really clear. Yeah. Just make it really clear.
So in the sense, it's helping to set the expectation for those participating that we're holding something together. And so not to break that space unless absolutely necessary. Is that the
Yeah.
idea? Okay.
It
Super
is.
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And for us as ritual leaders, let's say we're all studying to be a ritual leader. There are so many things that are happening in the world of spirit, in the astral world, in the spirit world. And if you're interested in learning more about that, it's really helpful, because when you hold a sacred space with a sacred intention, you want to make sure that you've called in. I have a particular way of calling in my spirit guides and calling in the spirit of what I want to call in, depending on what your tradition is. You just want to be really realistic about. You don't want any interference on the spiritual realm or on the astral realm. Or on the physical realm. So just be aware of that. I've been in a lot of rituals where people just didn't open the space properly. And what I mean by that is create a sacred circle with sacred intention, like to have an invocation, to have a demarcation of where the sacred space is. All of these things are really important. I've certainly been in rituals where that sacred space was broken and didn't go well. Yeah. So there's a lot to know about. As a ritual leader, you want to be sensitive to what's happening in the unseen realms as well. Yeah. Great question. Thanks.
I'm going to say one more thing, just as somebody who's participated in your rituals.
Yeah.
Is that you don't have to be like actively at the stations. If you need to go sit down in the circle for a little while, that's not breaking the space, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because you're within. There's a lot of freedom and movement within. It's just, a lot of people aren't used to doing rituals. In the ancient days, we would have done it together as a community, probably every month. And so everyone would kind of know the rules. And so it's just helpful to say, this is what a sacred space is. This is our intention. This is why it's helpful not to break the sacred space. Things like that. Yeah. Great question. Other questions? Rituals can be really simple and they can be really elaborate. It kind of depends on what you want to do. One of the funnest things that I enjoy most is actually creating and designing rituals, either with the individual that wants it, or the couple, or the family, or the community. And it's really a delight to say, okay, what's the intention here? Like, for example, it is spring equinox. If we were all getting together to create a spring equinox ritual, we would want to figure out what is the intention of spring equinox. Okay, it's the beginning of spring. Okay, it's things coming up from the winter. So you start to get creative, like, oh, maybe we could create like a winter space and then a spring space. And we could have people move from the winter into the spring, and we could have something fun happen when they come into the spring section of the ritual. Okay, so you just start to think about, how can I be creative with what the intention is? How do I want to create that intention? Maybe you draw a line, like you get a rope and you draw a line in the middle of the room and you say, this is winter and this is spring. And then you have people walk over that line, okay? And the fun thing too is that you can use very ordinary objects in your rituals. And so let's say we're doing a spring ritual and we say, okay, we're going to get candles, and maybe we want to burn something that we want to let go of from last year, and we want to come into the spring. So I have tons of ritual objects right here, by the way. I always have a cauldron, because cauldrons are great to burn things. So let's say you want to have a place where people are moving away from what they're letting go, and you want them to burn something. And then when they're done with that, they can cross over the line and go into the spring. Okay. You can use really simple objects. Let me show you some of the other objects that I have, and then we can talk about the different aspects of ritual, unless there's any more questions. Okay. So you can do rituals with one person. You can do rituals with a couple, like a sacred marriage or a sacred uncoupling ritual. You can do rituals with family, like a life cycle celebration, a death, a memorial. And you can do rituals with communities, okay, depending on what the focus is. Of course, you can do life cycle and seasonal cycle rituals. But you want to, as a ritual leader, you want to assess what the person needs, where they are, like developmentally, what do they need? And you also want to make sure that you recognize what kind of support structure they have, because I never underestimate the power of a ritual. It can open things up that normally stay closed in a box. And so you want to make sure that after the ritual, they have support, and you set that up, however you want to do that. So you're just taking time to assess and discuss with whoever you're working with, what are their needs? What do they feel comfortable with? What do they not feel comfortable with? Okay. And again, depending on your particular tradition. Okay, so just a simple way to think about structuring ritual space is to think about the physical aspect of the space. Are you going to be outside? Are you going to be inside? What does it look like? Are there windows? Do you want it to be dark? Okay, all of the physical aspects of a ritual space. The second thing you want to understand and think about is the psychological, emotional aspect of the space. Okay, so the state of the people involved and what kind of mood do you want to create? Okay, so think about the physical aspect and the psychological aspect. And then you want to think about the spiritual aspect. Now, if you're working with people who aren't spiritual, that's fine. If you are, then you want to bring in whatever your tradition is, whatever the other person's tradition is, because there's a whole aspect of ritual that's very spiritual, and you can bring that in as well. And that could be anything from starting with an invocation, a prayer, a calling in of the animal spirits, or whatever your tradition is. So I always talk ahead of time with people and ask what they feel comfortable with. I did a wedding for a couple that was very pagan, and they didn't want anything religious. And so I found this wonderful invocation that was an invocation to Mother Earth, and they loved it. So that worked for them. So you just have to kind of know your audience. Also, like working with spirit guides or ancestors, if that's something you want to bring in, that's really the spiritual aspect. And then you want to be very clear about setting the intention of the ritual, focusing the heart and the will. Like, let's say somebody wants to let go of a wound that was sustained at a particular time in their life. So you want them to be really clear. I want to do a ritual for my 5-year-old, okay? And so you set up the ritual so that it honors the 5-year-old and honors the healing of the 5-year-old, and then the moving or taking the 5-year-old, like a stuffed animal could represent the 5-year-old, and moving that into another new space. Okay, so you just want to set your intentions really clearly.
Jesse, oh, I'm sorry, Megan, we have a question from Jesse.
Yes.
Hi, I have more questions about how to conduct a non-spiritual ritual than I do how to incorporate the spiritual elements, because my experience and my tradition goes to places of invocation, and even how I would create a circle would have very spiritual, what I think of as spiritual components. So what can but obviously ritual has value even for people who don't have a spiritual practice. So what can secular ritual look like? What are the pieces?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Great question. Still, you want to attend to the physical and the emotional and setting intention. So all of that is the same. The thing about if you were doing a ritual that had absolutely no spiritual lingo in it, still think about how to open up the ritual space. So you might want to, for example, you might want to get like a bell, okay? And you use sound to open up the ritual space. It doesn't have to have words. You could use a crystal bowl, okay? There are so many ways that you can use sound, music. You could have a little bit of drumming. You could say something like, "We now open the ritual space." It could be as simple as that. So you can adapt all of this with whatever words that your group feels comfortable with, okay? So, however, it is important to open the ritual space, so to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if you open up the ritual space with sound, you might want to close with sound. So something like that, okay? And use, everyday objects. I have a ton of sacred objects in my home, so I just use a lot of sacred objects, but I have a lot of instruments too, and I like to use instruments because that's really a universal language for many people, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, thumbs up. Great. Thank you. Let me just finish this section on the ritual skills, setting intention, so focusing the heart and the will. Also, you can include writing. So let's say we're doing a summer solstice and we're saying, okay, what is it that our intention is for the summer solstice? It's when the light is at its brightest, and I'm going to write down my intentions for what I want to manifest, right? So you have paper and pencil ready for people, and you have a time. Maybe you play some really great music while people are silent and they're writing, or you could have an art exercise. Just make it sacred. So you put on music and you say, we won't be talking, and this is your time to focus in on what you want to write down. Also, it's important to have sensitivity when you're leading, to have sensitivity about the healing process. Some people cry, so I always have sacred tissue ready. Some people might start to freak out, or they feel really uncomfortable. So I always make sure there's somebody that's, if I'm drumming, for example, and I'm holding that space, I make sure that there's somebody there that could go to someone or ask if they need anything. Right. So it's nice to have assistance, actually, if you're holding ritual space. And then understanding the flow of a ritual. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. The beginning is to set out the sacred space. You can do it with sound, invocation, that kind of thing. You can have everybody holding hands in a circle if that is good. You can have a grounding, like meditation, where everyone grounds into the earth. And then you want to have a middle, and the middle is kind of the crescendo of the ritual. And so you want to build up to that crescendo. And then as you're winding down, you kind of feel the energy. It's very similar to when we do our ChI ordinations. I'm always saying, just be aware of the flow of the ritual. And in the ordination, the culmination of the ordination ritual is the laying on of hands. And so everything's moving to that part of the ritual. And then you kind of feel it winding down. So just have a sensitivity for the flow and the energy flow. And if you don't understand that now, that's fine, because you can train to really understand how to keep the movement flowing in a ritual. Okay, really important to have that sensitivity. And also just that, people have experiences, big experiences in ritual, and that's okay too. Just understand, to have tissue ready, and that some people feel totally uncomfortable dancing, and that might be exactly what they need to do to get the energy moving and that kind of thing too. So, you can prepare people ahead of time. So I'm just going to show you a couple things that I have on my desk, because I just pulled some stuff off of my shelves. I already showed you the crystal bowls. It's always really handy to have some egg rattles because you can put this in a little ritual kit, that like a mobile altar that you bring with you. And it's always good to have sound. And these things are great because they're so small. And sound is really great if you want to break up energy, like if people feel stuck, it's a really handy thing to have. This is one of my favorite objects. Some of you who've done ritual with me know this. It's a crystal good mother. She's beautiful. And so I always use this when I'm making an altar to the Divine Mother. Sometimes I like to use like sage or Palo Santo to burn before the ritual. But if you can't use that, you can use liquid sage. If you're in a place where you can't use fire, this is a great thing to have. I always have this in my little ritual kit. I always like to bring a chalice because you never know when you're going to need a good chalice. And then just a few little beautiful statues that I have. This one's from Thailand. I think this one's also from Thailand. This is Buddha. But you can get all kinds of stuff. Candles are great. Fabric is great. I always have a lot of ritual fabric. It's nice to bring altar cloths. So this is just, a nice altar cloth. This one's a beautiful Native American woolen cloth. Again, these are small things that you can bring with you and have like a little ritual kit. This is a handheld drum that you can use that's nice. I play djembe drums, so that's a different kind of drumming. You don't have to be a drummer, don't worry about it. It's just that if that's something that you want to use, you can. I have a really cool magic wand that I got. So sometimes you can use these objects in the play of a ritual, or it could be like on an altar. And that's the other thing. Learning how to create altars is a wonderful practice. And it's pretty simple. It's one of the things that we teach in our ritual leader training is the skill of how to make a beautiful altar. It's really great to just have a few pieces of nice cloth and some sacred objects. The other thing too is to recognize, to be able to be creative in holding different characters, so that you might want to build that into the ritual space. So you might have a gatekeeper at a threshold who's wearing a cape and you can't see their face, and that's okay. You may have like a divine mother, or you may have a spirit guide who's in a ritual outfit. Okay, so you want to make sure that these people are know how to hold the space, that they're kind of stationed at different places. Or you might have, like we've done a lot of rituals at ChI where we'll set up a table with a bowl of water and a bowl of salt. And the instructions are to take the salt and to put anything in the salt that you don't want anymore, and then you dissolve it in the water. It's so simple. A bowl of salt, a bowl of water. And when it's done in a ritual context, it makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so there's some really simple things you can do. Altar making, using the elements of earth, water, air, and fire, that can also be a really powerful part of a ritual. I'm finding more and more that I can't do outdoor rituals with fire. And so you have to be really creative with that. You can make, red cloth, or you can have candles that are really, in very contained spaces. Or you can get those kinds of candles that aren't burning, the battery candles. Those are good too. So the other thing that we do definitely in the training is that we learn how to use sound, because sound is one of the most amazing ways to change your brain waves, whether it's drumming or rattling, or rain stick making, or all kinds of things. So we're going to do a lot of totally experiential training. So you're going to feel all these different modalities so that you can start to choose, well, what modalities do I feel comfortable with? Okay. Also, we're going to do a lot of work doing psychodrama and role playing and just trying out some really cool stuff. Learning how to do guided meditation and shamanic journeying, because shamanic journeying is a wonderful thing to do in ritual space. And it could be as simple as drumming a drum beat, doing rattles, putting on meditation music. Okay. So we'll be teaching all these things in the experiential. But the main thing we're going to be teaching you is how to hold ritual space and how to create rituals with a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that you feel more and more confident of the kind of sacred space that you want to hold. And you're going to be getting better and better at creating and designing rituals yourself. So let's open it up now. I know we've got maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I'd be happy to answer more questions. And then I can talk about more rituals if you want to. So what's bubbling up for people?
I have everybody muted just because our dogs bark and we, so either raise your hand or wave your hands around and we'll unmute you. Or you could ask the question in the chat if your dog is barking right now.
David has another question.
I'm happy to hold mine for someone else. It's like 3 before me, right? So whoever else wants to ask a question first.
Yeah, I can't see anybody, Carrie, so.
Oh. Why don't you ask your question quickly,
Okay.
and I will look for the other 3.
All right. Thanks. So this might be for the class. This might be too much for right now, but so I come from 20 years in one specific tradition.
Yep.
So I know that tradition really well, right? What would be yours? I'm looking for where I might find resources to learn about rituals from other traditions. Whether it's, just where I might look for that. Obviously, taking this class is probably one spot, but are there any kind of resources, books, encyclopedias, websites that you think would be helpful for me to kind of gain, some other where I might look for their rituals? And then kind of secondary question with that, and this is like, just to put this out there, I'm a boring middle-aged, pretty privileged white straight guy, right? So one of my concerns here is that I don't want to appropriate other traditions and other cultures' rituals in a way that that is inappropriate. And I don't know what I don't know in that kind of realm. I know enough to know that's a problem, and I need to be very careful. So 1, where would I find resources? And 2, what kind of cautions might you give me, kind of given my position in the culture and not wanting to make things worse?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that question, both questions. Resources, I can send Carrie and then can send out to the group book resources. And I'm sure the Chaplaincy Institute has a lot more resources as well. So we can send that to you like a bibliography and websites. That's a great idea. The thing about ritual, it is so true that many cultures have very specific rituals that their people and ancestors have been doing for hundreds, thousands of years. And those people are lineage holders of that tradition. And that's great. We'll let them do that because that's what they're called to do. Remember too that all of us, our ancestors, have been gathering in ritual space forever. And so if you feel like you don't know what to do or you don't come from a specific tradition, then you can be really creative with how you hold a circle. Like I would never hold a Wiccan circle or open a Wiccan circle because that's not my tradition. I don't hold that lineage. So it's important to not feel like you're straitjacketed, like you can't do ritual, because everybody can do ritual. So you want to find a way that feels comfortable for you. And we can talk about it offline as well. I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. There are particular rituals that, again, if you're a lineage holder, that's great. And so you just want to respect that particular ritual that calls in particular spirits needs to be done by somebody who understands that. And so there are ways to tailor rituals that where you feel perfectly comfortable because it comes from what you know. Okay, but we can use the stars, we can use the sun, we can use fabric, we can use ropes, we can use all
dirt and water.
And those are really universal. So I think you need to find a place where you feel comfortable using universal ritual objects. Yeah, but David, it'd be great to talk offline. That'd be great.
Let's go to Rio and then we'll go to that question.
Oh, Rio? Yeah, Rio.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
hi. So do you have a favorite book or a video or something specifically for non-traditional weddings? I've been roped into officiating at a wedding and I never thought I would. It was never going to be my thing, but I guess it's going to be my thing in May. So I'm just, and I'm excited about it. I'm kind of really getting into it. But it's going to be a very unusual wedding. It's a whole elf theme. the couple is into cosplay, and we're all going to be dressed up as medieval and elves,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of going to be I don't know what, but
Awesome. An elfin wedding.
so an elfin wedding, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, do you have a favorite book or something?
Why don't I work with Carrie and get a really good resource together for everybody? And then we'll get that to you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Happy elfing.
Thank you. Love it. I love it.
I'm going to show you one
Alex?
book that I have, Hello, Goodbye, 75 Rituals.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's a good one.
Yeah, great.
But we'll put some together. Thanks so much, Ria.
Yeah.
All right, Jody Varner asks in the chat, I loved hearing about the salt ritual. Are there other simple rituals that you have found to be powerful?
Yes. One ritual we did in ChI years ago, after we set up the salt station for like letting go of and releasing into the water what you didn't want, then people walked down a little space, and they came to another station where there was someone standing behind a chair. You sat in the chair, and they gently touched and did sensory integration. So they just touched down the arms like this. I don't know if some of you were there, but it was so powerful because it was just the act of sitting down and allowing someone to touch your arms. It was really non-threatening. Of course, we asked everyone ahead of time whether that was okay. And people started crying, they melted. I mean, it was so simple. And then I think they came over to another station and we whispered blessings into their ears. So easy. So, you can do really, really simple things like that are so profound because you know what? We don't get touched enough. We don't get loved enough. We don't hear blessings enough. So simple things like that. But I could talk to you guys for hours about all the fun rituals that I've done. So if anybody wants to talk offline more about this, I'd be happy to do that. Alex, did you have a question?
Yeah, that might have just answered my question. I was wondering about simple rituals because the idea of a 2-hour ritual with multiple stations was a little daunting for me. So, but you might have just answered that. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's say somebody wants to do a healing ritual. They want to, for example, I once did a ritual for a woman who, when she was giving birth, she had to have a C-section, and she was really, really disappointed. And so we set up a little safe ritual space where she got to imagine that she actually birthed her child with that C-section. And we only had like her 2 or 3 girlfriends around her. We set up a little birthing station. She felt totally safe. That was one thing we did. Another thing was just setting up a space where you want to cross a threshold. Like, I'm finished with this and I'm moving into a new phase of life. And literally, I think I got some rope and I put rope down on the ground. She picked objects that represented what she was leaving behind. And then she picked objects where she was going towards. And when she was ready, she crossed the threshold, stepped over the rope, and then sat in like a little throne that we had made for her. And then we did a little laying on of hands and sang to her. We sang her name to her. Okay. So I always, whenever I'm creating a ritual, and I say, let's put a rope in the middle of the room and build a throne with some fabric. It always sounds really kind of hokey and goofy. And then when it's in ritual space, it's amazing how it transforms. People really feel like, wow, I'm crossing the threshold. And all you did was set up a rope in the room. So when you're creating a ritual, don't be afraid if it sounds really stupid or hokey, because within the ritual space, it's beautiful. Okay, so when you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you really hold that space, it can be simple and perfect. Yeah.
I have a question, Megan, and please continue to ask. How do you do rituals online? We're seeing spiritual direction clients online, and we have these courses online. Is that something you found a way to do?
I haven't. I'm sure it can be done if the person is, if you've coordinated it. I'm kind of a believer in the in-person. I mean, not that you can't do it. It's just a little bit trickier, I think. There's something that happens, that there's a magic, and I like the magic of having ritual together. Elizabeth was just saying that Elizabeth did a 60th birthday party ritual for me because it was right during the middle of COVID, and she brought these, I don't know, buckets full of rose petals. And she set out this amazing sacred space and everybody threw rose petals on me. That was amazing. So if you ever want to have rose petals thrown on you, I recommend it highly. Others, questions? Amy.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here and hear you, Megan, and see familiar faces. And not so much a question, but just an appreciation for this time. I wanted to share that I'm really excited that I'm going to start doing like ritual type. I'm not sure if I'm going to use the word ritual, hair appointments. So yes, I'm super excited. And one of the things that I've been a little concerned about is making it meaningful and like weighty enough without making it too heavy, because it's, I just didn't want it to get too heavy. But I've been getting more ideas just from listening to you about the simple things. I think are really going to help, the simple symbolic gestures. And then I think just paying attention to language. So I might just have to do more research about that. But do you have, maybe I do have a question. Do you have any ideas about like ritual light?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, if you have people light a candle for themselves and say something like, this is my intention, or you have a bowl of water and you have some flowers and you have them take a flower and put it in the bowl and they make a little blessing or a wish or something. Just a simple act like that is so powerful. Or I've often opened up ritual space where I have a bowl of water and then each person has a little glass of water and they pour their water into the communal water bowl. And that's lovely. So you could have candles, you could do something as simple as have a little flower. But when people participate and they say, this is my intention, it's really quite a strong statement. So get really simple and it's powerful.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Great question. Elizabeth Hutchins, nice to see you. You have a question. And that's probably our last one for the day.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Good to see you, Megan, and all of you. There was a question about online, and I participated in a retreat which had a wonderful ritual at one point. As we were deepening into our understandings of ourselves, that was the intention in finding our truest self. And the leaders put on some quiet music, and we were invited to walk all over where we were staying, where we were living, and to pick up some favorite objects that represented who we were and to place them on an altar. And I mean, I had a wonderful time with that. I had stuffed animals and candles and my good mother one from spiritual psychology of 7 years ago and all sorts of things. And then we were to take a photograph and to send that photograph as an attachment back to our leaders, who then made a collage of it and then shared it with us so that we all could see what was special in terms of how our truest self shined forth in the world. And it was wonderful.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm delighted to be here. I'm happy to answer questions offline. If you have questions, I think you've got my email. Let's start a dialogue. This is my favorite subject. I love it. And I really encourage all of you to try some things. And of course, our training, our ritual training is a 4-day intensive. August 24th, I think, August 24th to 27th of this year. It'll be in Redwood City, California. We've got some spaces open. It would be great to have you in the training.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much, Megan. Really appreciate your time here with us. Gosh, I took notes. I'm sure we all did. I'm going to put the email address, my email address, if anybody has any questions for me, and the Chaplaincy Institute website here in the chat. We will send out, everybody who registered for this meeting, I'll send out the things that we talked about and information about the retreat that Megan's doing and anything else we can think of. But let's go ahead and close our circle now. Sending you all off. Maybe let's hold up our hands for a little blessing. Go forward into the rest of the day on this beautiful first full day of spring. And hold love in your hearts, the love of the ChI community, on and on and on, beyond time and space, and in this very moment. May it be so.
May it be so.
Thank you, dear ones.
Thanks, everyone.